I think a lot of my childhood just stemmed in a lot of like invalidation of like the seriousness of the bullying. I think I was a more sensitive child with probably more needs. So invalidation of that as well.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors and ideators so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it nearly enough, and when we do, most of us, when we talk about people or with people in pain, we're not very good at it. Most of us are quite bad at it. So one of my goals with this podcast is to have more conversations and hopefully better conversations with survivors, in large part to help more people in more places, hopefully feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are an attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, I'd love to talk with you. Please reach out, shoot me an email, hello@suicidenoted.com. If you listen on Spotify, you'll notice that we have a weekly poll. Would love to hear your response. If you listen on Apple, you'll notice that you can rate this podcast. We would love it if you chose a 5-star rating, if that's what you think we've earned or deserved. And you can learn more about this podcast at suicidenoted.com, among other places. How to get involved, how to make a financial contribution, among other things. Mostly, I'm just glad you're here, and I'm glad you're listening. Now, finally, we are talking about suicide on this podcast, as we've done since 2020. My guests and I do not hold back, so please take that into account before you listen or as you listen. But I do hope you listen, because there's so much to learn. Today, I am talking with Annie. Annie lives in Pennsylvania, and she is a suicide attempt survivor. What's going on, Annie?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, más o menos. Where are you? Where do you live?
I live just outside Philadelphia.
All right. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Nice state.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking with me.
Yeah, I'm glad I reached out. Thanks for getting back to me so quickly.
Sure. That's what I do. Just talk to people. Talk to people, edit, and live impoverished. It's a great, I've hit it. I've nailed it. So you sent me an email, and one of the things in the email you want to talk about, not just about suicide, is about BPD.
That's correct. Yeah, I got diagnosed back in September, and that sort of came out of my suicide attempt, where I was like, finally, I need to address this. I would say it's something that has been a lifelong struggle, something I suspected for a long time. But there's so much misconception that even before I got diagnosed, I was like, why even bother chasing a diagnosis? Medical professionals look negatively on it. There's this common misperception that it could never be treated, that it's something you just have to live and deal with. So I was like, why even chase that and put that on my file when I would get judged for it?
Right. So we're going to get diagnosed, which for some people, there's some relief, right? It's got a name, but then the very people who might help me with it could look negatively, and there's no real treatment anyway. So now what?
So, I guess going back, I had sort of known growing up, I had dealt with a lot of emotional regulation issues to the point where when I was a kid, I got diagnosed with a mood disorder. Mm-hmm. And it was just sort of, and I had seen flitted out of, seeing psychiatrists or therapists, and nothing seemed to really fit. And I just felt a sense of like, they don't really understand what the problem is. Mm-hmm. And it was a sense of, you're like, well, you have depression, you have anxiety, maybe you have bipolar disorder, but there wasn't a sense of ever something truly fitting. And I was like, I think that was part of the problem, where it was, where you have that such a sense of misunderstanding where, okay, you know what? The doctors aren't helping me. I'm going to handle this myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and how old are you at that time?
Probably early 20s. I had just kind of gone out of, seeing a psychiatrist. I had a big life change going to college, moving away from home. And it was all chalked to well, this is normal. It's very normal to experience this sense of depression and anxiety and,
Sure.
emotional dysregulation, kind of being out of your element. But it
Hmm.
was something where I was like, it was part on me for not, kind of speaking up for more for myself, and talking about truly how bad it was.
Hmm.
Also, that sense of invalidation of, I don't think this is like what typical people experience. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I will just, handle this myself.
What I'm just curious, when you're thinking about a kid or a teenager, the mood stuff or other stuff, kind of thing that would have you go to a doctor or have you disciplined or create problems. What were those things? What would you do? Were you the kid running around the block? Were you the kid screaming? Were you the kid never doing their homework?
No, I was always like, I think that's why it was stayed successfully hidden so long, is I've always been pretty academically, career-wise successful. As a kid, I would just like anything would set me off into temper tantrums, full blown, like just like rage, throwing things, yelling, screaming. I would get in fights with other kids, but it was kids who were probably like bullying me, and then I would not know how to handle that, and not handle it in whatever way adults felt to be the best way. So a lot of it came from that, and I think a lot of my childhood just stemmed in a lot of like invalidation of like the seriousness of the bullying, invalidation of like what I think I was a more sensitive child, with probably more needs, so invalidation of that as well.
And then it's put on you, like you're sensitive.
Yeah.
Like it can't possibly be anything that we're doing. It's you. Why are you being, I don't know if I'm projecting here. Why are you being so sensitive? Like, okay, I might skew towards more sensitive than others, but like, why are you being a dick? Yeah, you should ask that question too. Why are you being an asshole with me? And maybe I'll be a little less sensitive. So this is something I imagine that is happening for years.
Yes. Yeah.
In that time, when do you first start to think about, and we're going to go back and forth. This isn't like a perfect linear narrative. Do you recall when you first started to think about like suicide as an option for you?
Yeah, I think the first like major break in my life was around when I was like 10. My uncle got diagnosed with cancer. At the time, we didn't know it was terminal. But my mom's side of the family had always been super close with each other. I have a couple of cousins around my age, but after their dad got diagnosed, my parents would watch my cousins a lot, just so my aunt could go and sit in treatment with him. It was just a bad, not just because of the cancer, but I think so much is put on, on that person. Obviously, they're dealing with a devastating situation, and who knows, what my aunt and my cousins were dealing with at the time. But I also, for my cousins, became like the punching bag for what they were feeling. So they would come here. I would get bullied by them. I'd go to school. I get bullied there. And the whole time was like, well, their dad is sick. So you got to put on a happy face and just make things easier for right now.
And you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to go right into, I don't know how many, have you listened to a lot of episodes?
I've listened to a few.
Right.
Yeah, I found you guys after my suicide attempt.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
But you know that I have a gift for memoir titles, right? You do know that, right?
I have heard that. Yeah.
That is objectively true. Now, you Happy Face is actually a contender. However, you get final say, and it also has serial killer vibes. So like that's a really big risk in terms of a memoir. So you, Annie in Pennsylvania, are going through life, you're getting bullied, your uncle gets cancer, you are a punching bag. I know I'm doing this summary thing. I do it for me, I do it for the audience, but it helps my brain a little bit. And all the while you're kind of presenting to the world, with the exception of the tantrums. Can we call them tantrums? Or those of like most of the things are okay, I'm doing well in school, I mostly get along. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah.
But you said at 10, when your uncle gets cancer and then you're the punching bag, that's when you start to, the thoughts of not wanting to be alive anymore creep in a little bit, or no?
I would say yes. It happened more so after the fact. After my uncle passed, it was like the glue, the family sort of fell apart. And I think his death affected my mom a lot.
Yeah.
So I started to feel her absence, emotional absence. And I think a lot of my stability was kind of starting to erode. And that's when it kind of creeped in my head, like, okay, maybe this just leaving would be a better option because at least I don't have to deal with this pain.
And how old were you then?
I would say 11, 12.
Not a good time to have non-stability in one's life.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that? How do you cope?
Not well. I remember telling my mom, I think I'm depressed. And I love my mom, and I think my mom did the best that she could. But I also don't think that the resources and the understanding was there either. Like it was, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. And it was like, well, you're 11, 12. Like how big really are your problems?
Mm.
Eventually, it kept getting worse where I would just, as you said, put on the happy face, bottle it up. I wrote a lot of journaling. And one day my mom had found that in my room. And it was a lot of like, how would I do it type stuff. And she actually sent me to like a psych hospital.
Mm.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience. I'm curious about those.
I don't think they're helpful. You're put into a room. You don't have a lot of like interaction, and you see all sorts of wildly different mental situations that you can't relate to. I think it's more of like a triaging, like just making sure you don't hurt yourself in that moment. I don't think it provides a lot of long-term help. It's good in the moment.
Yeah, and then we could argue, one could debate for some people in some places, maybe it not only doesn't do long-term help, it might even do some harm.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own story and own experience, of course. And so how old were you when you were in that hospital?
I was 12.
Okay. How old are you now?
I'm 30.
When you leave the hospital, I know life doesn't work in which everything's magically wonderful now. That's just not how it works. And how many attempts do you have? The one attempt, and that was just recent, right?
Yeah, there's always been, it's a sliding scale, I feel like, but I would say the last attempt was a true attempt and probably my only true attempt.
And that was what, June or July of this year?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 18 years between that hospital stay, more or less, and this, what you're calling the real true attempt. And in that time, and I want to hear more about what happens in that time, but how often do you think about ending your life?
At least once a month. If things get really bad, that's the option.
And what makes this the true attempt, but the other ones are like quasi attempts? They
always speak of like suicide as it's a call for attention, which I really think is a bad way. I think it's an accurate way, but I think it's a bad phrasing, because in those, I guess, quasi attempts, it was more so, you aren't listening to me. This is how bad it is. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm hiding, but this is what I'm feeling. I need somebody to help me and pay attention.
Right. Maybe I'm misunderstanding this phraseology, but it keeps putting it on you. It's a call for attention. It's like, yeah, I get it. But it's like, here's how I see it. It sounds negative.
Yeah.
It's as if it's a little baby, which, by the way, they need attention. And I always just think, yeah, you're not giving them the right kind of attention. And so they're doing these things because they're human. Why is it considered a negative thing? It's actually a survival thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. That's a good way of putting it, like survival.
Right. Like without that, I'm going to do worse. So please, this might look weird to you or scary, but this is how I'm expressing this problem. So those quasi attempts, I know you're thinking about it throughout those 18 years. And I know it's not once a month on the 12th of every month, but it's somewhat regular. It's not every day. I'm just curious about your sort of general life. So things like college, marriage, kids. I know you're only 30 these days, but people, I don't know. Do you move out of a home? Give me like a little bullet version of your life from high school to now.
Yeah. So high school, I graduated. I went out of state to college, graduated college early, moved across country for a job. My mom got sick with cancer. I decided to take a job transfer back closer, not quite to home, but like at least a couple hours drive. My family's from Maryland, so Pennsylvania is not that far. So took the job transfer here, met someone, stayed, got married. And I would say up until probably a week before the attempt, outside looking in, everything looked great. I had a few months before that, I had gotten a new job with increased responsibility, increased salary. I had just weeks before graduated with my MBA. We had a house together. I was married, had a dog.
What kind of dog?
Eagle mix.
All right. So, I mean, this is the dream. This is the dream, Andy.
I'm living the dream. And then pretty quickly, the facade, it crumbles.
Is it quickly, though?
Now looking back, it wasn't quickly, but at the time, it was very quick. It felt quick.
Right.
Because I didn't put the pieces together.
Sure. Well, when you're in it, it gets real hard to. And you've got these other responsibilities: a partner, a dog, a job. All of it. I'm curious. Let's talk about the suicide attempt this summer. But this summer, you tried to end your life legit.
Mm-hmm.
How did you try?
I bought a camping grill and put it in my car for carbon monoxide poisoning.
Okay. Is that something that you needed to research a little bit?
This sounds dark. I guess that's the point of the podcast. I just wanted a quick and painless way.
I'm not sure I know what the point of the podcast is. Tell me.
Especially coming out of my suicide attempt, it was all I just wanted to address. And so many people were so afraid of talking through the specifics with me, either because they were afraid it would trigger me again, or they just didn't want to picture it in their head. I like that, I think, and then kind of going back, I think one of the things when you come out of that suicide attempt, people expect you waking up to regret it, to, like, oh my gosh, my life was wonderful. Why would I have done that? This whole mindset change. And I did not have that. I woke up and I was like, well, I have even more problems now than when this happened, and I think it's refreshing to hear other people in the podcast kind of say the same thing. Things are hard. I'm here and I'm working through it, but things are just, you don't take a magic pill and things are better. You just have to kind of look to the next day and put your energy into that.
I've got a lot to say about that. I completely agree with you. And I think it's one of the things that I tend to really pick a lot on some of these suicide prevention speakers. I have no problem to get paid money to go and speak and inspire, but I think that's the exact message most of them, whether they realize it or not, are saying is, I did this thing, don't do it. You'll regret it. You'll cause a lot of pain in people's lives. And it does get better. And it's like, there's so much more to that conversation. And sometimes it's just simply not true. But there's enough people that want to cheer and say, yeah, it's great that, okay. So anyway, yeah. So yeah. And I was joking that I didn't understand the point of this podcast. What I do think is interesting is that people often use the word dark. And I always wonder why they choose that word. I think I understand why they choose that word, but it's like, I think we've been trained like fucking Pavlovian dogs to think that this shit's dark when it's like, it's just part of life.
Yeah. And I guess that's part of the suppression. When you emotionally suppress things, it just builds and builds and builds and then explodes. So I think this podcast is a good way of just kind of releasing that tension a little bit.
Yeah, maybe I should call it the light podcast. Well, I always just think that the talking about it is the light part, not the dark part. You can say like the attempt is dark if you choose to. I wouldn't use that language. But it's your attempt, your words. I'm not the language police. But talking about it is the lightest shit in the world. Because how about go 5 years not talking about it? See how you feel. Because that's not going to end well, usually.
I would agree.
So you got carbon monoxide poisoning in the car, summer 25. Does your partner know what's going on?
So 3 days before the attempt, he had actually filed for divorce.
Is this where the crumbling part came in?
I think it would have happened to trigger the divorce, but this is where I was like, I think in all these quasi attempts, going back what I was saying before, there was always that this is a cry for attention, but I always saw there's 10% if somebody sees this and something changes, maybe like I saw that 10%, I guess what kept me from being 100% committed to it. But at that point, when he filed for divorce, I was like, I'm just tired of riding this roller coaster. I can get on this roller coaster and I can keep on going, but it's going to go up and then it's going to go down again. And I'm like, I can't handle it for it to go low because this is a pretty low point. I was like, I don't have anything to lose by doing this.
I'm not trying to pour fuel on fire, but I want to get the whole picture. Were there other things happening in your life that spring or summer leading up to it that were also contributing factors? Like in the external stuff, especially like filing for divorce or the loss of a friend or the loss of a job or that kind of stuff?
I'd probably, in hindsight, made a mistake taking the job that I took. It was a long commute, so I was putting a lot more more household responsibilities on my husband. I was very stressed at the job, and one of the things with like borderline personality disorder, I guess one of the hallmarks is that something that would maybe briefly annoy somebody else would just cause me to go mismatched anger and response. So with the job being as stressful as it was at the time, I was really good at just suppressing it and putting that happy face on work. And then I would come home. Unfortunately, my ex he was that emotional regulation tool where I was like, I need to let it all out somewhere. And he was there. I think he understood the stress. But I also think it was very much burning him out, understandably.
I mean, I think we have proof.
Yeah.
Just backtrack for a little bit, and then I do want to get to the attempt. But the quasi attempts, those, and that's my word. I use that word. So if you don't like it, you can change it. Did you always almost try with the same method, or would you mix it up and experiment or explore other options?
It was always pills. And I think it's because in the back of my head, I knew that with like pills, you do the research and it's not as successful. Or you have a long time to like kind of sit there and change your mind and then go get medical help. And I think that's why I always kind of chose that option.
Right. Yeah. Right. That makes sense. But this summer was different. So you find this way in which you could potentially die through carbon monoxide poisoning. You put it in your car. Where's the car?
I had parked it it was around my neighborhood, but it was kind of like in a hidden spot. So I didn't want it to be found by like passerbys, a random kind of empty parking lot.
And once the decision was made to end your life, how much time goes by? Is it a week or 2 weeks or 1 day or 3 days where it's like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to find this thing. I'm going to get this thing plan in motion?
It was that morning. Like my husband had filed and it was after one of my, I guess, leading up to that was quote unquote episodes. We called them. And I had said to myself, I need to turn my life around. I need to get this fixed. I can't do it by myself. And I had called a bunch of intensive outpatient therapy places. And I was really had set on getting some mental treatment. But I woke up on June 30th, which was like a Monday morning. Still, I didn't call it a worker. Like my husband had called me on Saturday morning and said, I'm filing for divorce. I woke up with the idea that I would just go to work on Monday and it would at least let me forget about everything else that was going on. I've always been sort of a workaholic and work's been really great at just letting me better suppress all my issues that were going outside and just, okay, let me just focus on something else right now that isn't me. And so I woke up and I was like, I can't do the happy face today. I can't pretend.
I can't do the happy face today, a face I've done countless times. I mean, why not? Why not one more day of just putting the happy face on, doing the commute, going home, doing what you do?
I think I had just reached my breaking point out of so much buildup. And that was just all I could think about what I was losing.
Oh, that day was different.
Woke up and I don't think I was physically capable of putting the happy face. And I knew I wasn't. I didn't want to go to work and show anybody what I was truly feeling or risk doing that. And
so you already had the what were we calling it? A barbecue?
The grill?
What's a grill? Why am I thinking barbecue? I'm not an intelligent guy. You got the grill. It's in the car. You got the car. So what I want to gauge is the space your head's in. If I'm there, you don't see me, flying the wall kind of thing, right? Are you measured, intentional control? Are you freaking the fuck out? Are you somewhere in between? I just remember feeling such a weight in my chest. It felt like such a wound. It felt like a physical wound where I was like, this is so painful. I can't overcome this. Mm-hmm. And I need relief from this pain. And you tried stuff. Tried to get relief over the years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if you're gonna end your life, that is probably most of the time, and I've had a lot of conversations. I've tried what I can try. It hasn't worked. This is the only thing I can think of that will work.
I had tried so many different options, or at least going to the professionals
Mm-hmm.
and having those conversations where I had just kind of come to the conclusion of, my brain's broken and there would be absolutely no way for me to change or become somebody I was happy with. I could keep trying, but I would also keep failing. One of the other things with borderline personality disorder is called like the favorite person. And you sort of just wrap up your whole identity, sense of self, your reason for being with that favorite person. And throughout my life, I've had different favorite people, my mom, friends, and then my ex-husband. It was always the same pattern and cycle of, I would glom onto that person. It would give me such a sense of purpose and meaning and a reason for living. And then that person would ultimately burn out. I would do something that couldn't be taken back, whether that was kind of just being sort of an asshole some way or another, that they walked away. And I'm like, I can't do this where people keep walking away. And that's really what I felt there. I was like, I'm tired of the cycle.
And in this case, it was your husband.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, that's a particular unique relationship. And all the while this is going on leading up to it, not just days or weeks, but, your life, you do not know that you have BPD. This does not happen until after your attempt, the diagnoses.
Yeah, I had suspected. I had not gone after a diagnosis until after the attempt.
You are seeing therapists or counselors or psychiatrists or psychologists.
Now, yeah.
Then in your in your teens and 20s.
I had kind of like flitted on and off. Something would happen, maybe an episode where like I'm like, oh, my life, I blew up my life again. Lost my favorite person. Maybe had an angry outburst somewhere. Get help, and then eventually things would be okay. And I would suppress it long enough to where like I don't think I need this. I don't think I need the help anymore. And then I would leave.
Did you ever try medication?
I did, but the side effects are horrible. I mean, I think medication's good. I'm on medication now, but I think people also expect it to be the happy pill, and it needs to be in conjunction with a mindset change and going to therapy.
When you say you lose, like, I don't know the exact words you use, but like when you have an angry outburst, if you did that right now with me, would I be like, this is a completely different person?
I think so.
How different are you? Is it like movie material?
I would say it's a very irritable, grumpy person. If you picture any sort of like Karen, those like viral Karen videos.
Oh man, who doesn't? Are you kidding me?
I would say it's a very Karen personality.
Okay, that's not actually as intense as I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I would say that's the baseline, and then it can escalate to just throwing things or being violent.
Oh, physical violence sometimes?
Yeah.
Did you ever hit your husband?
No, but I did. I don't think that negates the physical violence. I did like throw things. And I do remember at the time my feelings being like, I just didn't know how to sit with my emotions. And I was like, I don't know how to get this out of me other than throwing something.
When I hear that, and I'm no shrink, but like that's when people flip out. And even if they seem dangerous or whatever, like that's kind of what's happening. I don't know and this is just my take on it. Like, I don't have any other way to get this out. This is all I know. Doesn't make it okay. This is all I got. Yeah. Everything in my being is telling me to do this and spit venom. This is just the way I've lived my life. There are consequences to that. Yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's so selfish. You don't even identify what you're doing to the other person. It's all about what you're feeling and what you're doing.
I think we need to do that. Hopefully we can say we're sorry afterwards, but that's ideal.
No.
I don't know. Everyone's different. So that day you are in the car in an area in somewhere in the state of Pennsylvania where no passerbys. You know how to use the grill in a way where there will be carbon monoxide released, and you do it. What happens? Tell me. What do you do? Like take me through you parked your car. Let's go from there. How's that?
I had actually, so just kind of give some background. My sister had actually come up with a divorce. I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive family. My sister's a teacher, so she had the summer off. So when my husband filed, I was at my parents' house, and I decided to go out a Sunday, and then I was going to go to work and everything. And she was like, "I'll come with you. I'll stay at your house for the week. I'll help you, and be your support during this time." So she was at my house. She had thought I had gone to work because I had left the house with the full intention of going to work and then just changed my mind halfway through driving there. So I had actually had my location shared on my phone. And at the time, it was a decision I had made because I was like, I don't want my family, I don't know what they're going to think when I don't come home from work. And I don't want them to like be up all night, like wondering. I wanted them to have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want them to sit with that, which I guess in my head, it had made sense at the time. What actually ended up happening, because I had spent the day really just driving around, kind of thinking about how I was going to do it. And it ended up being pretty late in the day when I decided to do it, that my sister had started to get worried because I hadn't come home from work yet. I actually had a doctor's appointment set up for the intensive outpatient that evening, and I missed that appointment. When I made the appointment, I had put down an emergency contact, which was my mom. They're actually the reason I'm still here today is when I missed my appointment, they reached out to my mom to tell her that I had missed my appointment. My mom then reached out to my sister to see if everything was okay. And my sister, she's the one that found me in the car because she'd used the location feature to find me.
Was it work? So at what point into this whole process of this thing releasing carbon monoxide in your car does your sister find you and you're obviously not dead yet?
So I was actually unconscious. I know I had been in the car probably 2 or 3 hours at that point. She pulled me out somehow of the car and called 911. I know she did CPR. I know from several doctors telling me just how close it was. I know that my heart stopped twice. I do remember they defibbed me in the parking lot before loading me up on the ambulance. I actually remember not waking up, but I remember being in the ambulance. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear everything. And I really had the sense that I was dying. And I know that they defibbed me again in the ambulance. And then I woke up a couple days later in the trauma shock center.
Do you have any memories of when they were trying to save your life and you felt like you were dying in that sort of space between having any thoughts of, don't save me?
Yeah. I remember I could feel it was almost like I was floating above my body. I can remember just like feeling very much like on the edge of life and death. And I could feel like I was like, oh, I could just choose. Like I could feel my body was like automatically fighting to stay alive. At that point, and I was just like, stop fight. I remember making a mental note, like, stop fighting. I want to go. You don't think that mental willpower has an effect. It does, because right after I had that, I started doing that. I remember the paramedics going, we're losing her.
Uh-huh.
And then they shocked me again.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, actually. I do think there's a lot of power with that stuff. We don't know much about it, but in terms of they were losing you in large part because of what you just described. Yeah, that makes sense. But yet, you had no power of them and what they did. And what they did ended up saving your life.
Yeah.
And then you wake up 2 days later in the hospital.
Yeah.
And how do you feel?
I felt awful. I remember they had put, I think it was like a vent at that point in my throat. And I remember the first thing I did was I woke up. They told me where I was and I ripped the vent out. I was like, maybe this will do something. Obviously it didn't. But I think that's the one thing I felt people were so surprised by. They were like, well, how do you feel now that you survived? And I was like, I'm pretty ambivalent.
Right.
They expected to be so grateful. And I felt anything but. And I just felt so much shame.
Myths and misconceptions, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And also, is there, I don't know if this was your experience, isn't there an immediate or a quick, I want to know, why did you do it? Why? We have to try to figure out why. Was it the husband? Was it the job? Was it why? I just, that is an understandable human reaction, but it kind of baffles me sometimes. Want to understand the reasons and that you would know the reasons, you can articulate the reasons, that it's so neat and tidy. So who was there? You had certainly had some hospital staff. Were there any family or friends that were at your bedside?
Yeah, both my parents and my sister. And I think that's the worst part is, you can say what you want, seeing the effect of that on them was very sobering. It was hard to wake up and be like, well, now I caused even more problems because now my sister is going to have to sit with the rest of her life of, what if I was 10 minutes later to that car? My parents have to sit with them, why didn't we all go up there and tell her, make her take the day off work or make her stay in Maryland with us a little bit longer? It just totally upended their life. And that's what I felt really guilty about. And I remember I'm like, I wish there was a way for me to go away and not hurt anybody else. I was like, I couldn't even do this right.
Yeah. Did any of them say that to you, or are those things that you just feel they feel?
I just felt that they were very supportive, like above and beyond, but I couldn't help but feeling that way.
Yeah. Was there anybody, family, friend, staff, ex-husband, whomever, that said things that were hurtful or felt shitty to you?
I know that one of the things that my husband had said to me before I had the suicide attempt, but while he was fine, was, I know you can't control these emotional outbursts, and I just don't think you'll ever change.
That one will stay with you for a while.
Yeah. And that was the thing going through my head. And I don't blame, that was my choice to do the attempt. And I get how he reached that breaking point and how he came to those thoughts, but it didn't help either.
Outside of medical professionals, you've got your parents and your sister that know about that day.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, other than present company, who else knows?
No, at the time, no one.
Over time,
well, I guess my ex-husband did.
How did he find out?
My parents had called him when they weren't 100% sure whether or not I would survive. And they told him, she's not awake. You might want to get out here. At the time, I had been transferred from Philadelphia to Baltimore. You may want to come out to Baltimore and say goodbye.
You know my next question, of course, right?
Yeah.
He didn't go.
Mm-hmm.
So how long are you in the hospital for?
I was in the trauma shock center. It was the day before 4th of July. So I was probably in there like 3 days or so. And then they transferred me to the medical center for a day. And then they transferred me to the psych ward.
Psych ward for Independence Day?
Yeah. Saw the fireworks for my room.
It's a different kind of fireworks, I suppose. Yeah. So how long were you there?
I was there a little over a week. As soon as they could let me out, I was out of there.
Is that your second hospital stay, or were there some in between the first one that you mentioned earlier and this one?
It was my third. I talked about the one I had at 12. I actually had one at 13 that I self-admitted I went to an adult and had myself admitted because I felt like I would commit suicide. And I had a plan at the time.
And was that one like the first one? Kind of not good?
I had pills. I think I had taken a couple, or not anything to do anything, but I had taken a couple and kind of stopped myself. Had found like a school counselor and said, I need to go to the hospital.
Oh, okay. I see. I was actually, and I was curious also about the stay itself, because I know the first time it wasn't a good experience, and I'm wondering if the second was any better.
You know what it was? It was a different facility, and I think it was different because there were other kids there that had also had suicide attempts. I think my first attempts, there weren't any. I was the only kid. Everybody else was like 30 or older, all adults. And this time was different because I was with other people who were feeling the same way.
Right. So now we're back to the summer. You get out. A few people know. I know at some point within, I don't know, a couple months, you end up getting diagnosed with BPD.
Mm-hmm.
And not to make it about me or the podcast, but I think they're related. Like, at what point do you stumble upon this podcast?
I found it probably I was just still trying to make sense of the suicide attempt, and it was just so isolating. Nobody wants to talk about it. I actually searched like suicide or suicide attempt on the Spotify app. And it's just one of the first things that popped up.
It's the best one too, honey. I'm just kidding. Everyone's got
So
that.
I would agree with that.
I mean, I'm pretty proud of it. But yeah, so you listened to some, okay, connected enough to want to reach out, obviously, and here we are. At what point do you get diagnosed with? But before we get to the diagnosis, and I'm really want to talk about this because it's one of the things you clearly stated you want to talk about, and
Mhm.
is like, so do you get back to life? Because a lot's happening this summer, right? You tried to end your life, then you're in a hospital. You recently separated. I don't know where the dog is. Probably still have your house. I don't know if you have a job. Like, what's July and August like?
It was horrible, but now I can see the better light of it. Is I was still in this mindset of I'm going to fix it myself. So after the hospital, they wanted to put me in like a partial hospitalization program.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, my job knew that I was hospitalized, but not why. One of my sister and my mom I was talking to my boss and stuff at the time. At the time, the company itself was going through a lot of layoffs. And I felt this pressure of, well, if I don't go back to work right away, even though, quote unquote, there's so-called, workplace protections that are supposed to protect you from getting singled out for medical reasons. Like I know in reality, that's not always the case. So I skipped over the partial hospitalization recommendation. I went back to work, I think 2 or 3 weeks after the attempt, full time. I was always worried. I was like, if I don't have my job, then I'm not going to be able to keep my house. And that's just one more thing I'm going to lose. And I was just so focused on just keeping what I had, even though I didn't feel like it was enough. And I think the thing that kept me going was, the suicide has always been an option on the table for me. And right now that option is gone. So I need to just kind of accept where I'm at and make the best of it.
What do you mean when you say it's gone?
Because it wasn't something I was easily going to be able to do again because my family was so worried. They were staying with me and I was getting why, like, I just knew I wasn't going to be able to do that again.
And just to push back against some people and how they think about post-suicide stuff is that it wasn't necessarily that you weren't thinking about it or would have done it if you could have. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
A messy summer. Is that a fair, not the memoir title, but a fair, accurate description of messy summer?
Very messy summer.
What
And
about
meanwhile, my ex-husband was in the background saying, you need to go and pick up the paperwork and deal with the paperwork. I was trying to push back and saying, obviously, my mental health is not in a good state right now. Just give me like a couple of months to kind of like get my shit together and then I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
So it's just another pressure point for me.
And do you work in a field? I know you said you got an MBA, so I'm imagining you work in a field where if they knew the reason you were hospitalized, that would jeopardize your career?
I think so. I work in a manufacturing environment, so it's all very much like macho. I work around a lot of men, macho, blue-collar men, and it's not sort of the thing people talk about or, bring up. And it's very difficult to be in a field where I'm the only woman manager and one of the only woman manager at my company. You sort of have to present yourself differently and act differently and sort of be one of the guys in order to get your work done.
Yeah, like even more pressure. And then, of course, if they think you're thinking the way you were thinking, it is not fair, but who knows what comes with that? Probably not good stuff.
Yeah.
Whew. So how do you get from, we got that, you get through the summer, fall, and now we're into January. We're talking on January 11th, 2026. And you reached out only, what was like a week or two ago. It was pretty recent. So you get through the fall and much of the winter, clearly, some of the winter. What's that been like?
I think one of the things that really saved me was, so instead of taking the partial hospitalization route, I did an intensive outpatient route. And I think that was one of the things so I did like group therapy 3 times a week, individual counseling. And it's probably another reason I connected so much with this podcast is, I was so in my head for so long thinking I'm the only one that's dealing with these thoughts and feelings. Like, how could I go on to being introduced to a whole group of people who are also dealing with very similar issues where, maybe their problems were also minor, but they validated your experience. They had the same thoughts and feelings. The group therapy was amazing just to have the community where I had lost so much, especially that support with my ex that, I found this whole other group of people that were willing to hear me out and could validate what I was saying and maybe redirect my mindset in a better way.
Mm, that's cool. And that's also because that's the fall. That's when you get diagnosed with BPD, right?
That's correct. What was interesting when I was in the psych hospital, I had actually asked them to test me for BPD. And they did. They actually were like, we don't know if you have it. And they pushed me towards like neuropsych testing, which I did after I got out, and then I got the diagnosis there.
Some people who I've spoken to feel like BPD is this sort of condition. I'm sure you've heard this before, where it's like, you have problems. We don't know exactly what it is. We'll just put you in that bucket.
I have heard that it's probably a mix of various things. I do think there's different phases of it, but I do think it's a true diagnosis. I mean, if you look at like depression or anxiety, that also has a lot of different faces to it.
Right.
If you look at depression, some people just get super irritable. Some people get anxious. Some people are, they don't sleep. Some people sleep all the time. I think borderline's sort of another version of that. There's many different faces to it, but I do think, and then unfortunately, it's just not a disorder that people have a lot of compassion for.
Why do you think that is? Any ideas?
I think people think it's controllable, and it just feeds this like self-hate that you have for yourself. When I first suspected that I had it, the first thing you do is type in borderline personality disorder in Google. And the resources that pop up are, this is a personality disorder. This is, no medication will help this. You sort of have to live with it. It's not curable. Or you see something else like, these people are just, crazy and they're just, they're psycho and they, do all these crazy things that don't make sense. Or you see people who are like, oh, I'm a borderline personality disorder relationship survivor, where I was in a relationship with somebody that had personality disorder and they harassed and stalked me. And you see such of the extremes of this disorder, and you don't want that label. You're like, why would I ever want that label? Especially if there's not really a treatment path for it either.
Yeah, I mean, that also speaks to how we learn about things these days too, right? So someone just sees something on TikTok or Instagram about how their ex, who was a borderline, treated them, and it's boom. And this is where we get our information off it. And this is what like influences or informs how we think about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately the help that you get from the American medical system is so poor. One of the thing that I didn't realize until I had kind of gone through my intensive outpatient program was what's called DBT, which is sort of like the gold star standard.
Yeah.
Borderline. A lot of times when I had gone to therapy, you sit and you talk about your life, or you're being told to come up with self-affirmations for yourself, which is something I didn't find helpful because by the time I'm going to therapy, everything that I was doing as this other psycho monster in those episodes, I didn't relate to that. I didn't understand. I'm like, I logically saw why that was bad. But the thing that with DBT that I think helps is it helps you build the tools. So when you're back in that mindset, you can pull from the tools. You can pull from, okay, how do I emotionally regulate myself? How do I kind of ride out my emotions? How do I feel my emotions physically and then teach my body to relax? Which I think comes naturally to some people, but obviously there's something in my brain where it just isn't natural.
So if you had that skill set or those tools 6 months ago or 6 years ago, maybe we're not talking.
I think so. I know I wouldn't be divorced right now if I had the tools.
How does that sit with you?
It's tough, but I think one of the things that I really learned from therapy, and I think is really important to kind of carry on, is the concept of radical acceptance, which is things kind of are what they are. you're like, okay, well, I can accept those things in the past were bad, but it doesn't focus on ruminating like, okay, what if scenarios? This is the situation now. It's not changeable. How are you going to look forward? Which is sort of the mindset that I've had to kind of really rely on.
Yeah. And if you can embrace that, I think it's wonderful. It's just hard.
Yeah, definitely easier said than done.
Definitely
sure.
easier done. I know DBT is a lot of work when it's done the right way. But you mentioned something. I don't know if this has shifted for you, but you're a favorite person kind of person. It just sounds like you're in a hard spot, but it's a better spot.
I guess now I'm trying to learn how to be my own favorite person.
Now we're getting into a memoir title, Annie. Now we're talking.
I like that. That's a good one.
My own favorite person? My own favorite person. I mean, I think we have, if not a winner, we're getting damn close. I was going to throw out a little play on the happy face, go with quasi happy face, but my own favorite person is, like I said, Annie, it's a gift. You don't need to write the book. You don't need to start a podcast. It's just a title. We subtitle TBD. As we speak today, it is, I'm in Central Time. You are probably Eastern Standard. Weekend, are you suicidal?
No, I would say it's a thought where my mindset on it has changed, where, I had mentioned earlier, it was a thought that would come up pretty frequently, once a month or, not on that exact time frame, but enough. I think one of the things has changed where I would feel that thought and I would immediately, okay, I'm feeling suicidal, suppress it, push it down. I'm not suicidal. I'm going to put on the happy face, push the feelings aside, where now I can be like, okay, yes, I'm feeling suicidal. I can feel it. And I'm like, well, why am I suicidal right now? Rather than just jumping, I get a paper cut and then I jump to, oh my God, my life is terrible. Such an extreme of what borderline is, something minor happens, you jump to the extreme of I'm suicidal. Right. I can take a step back and be like, okay, well, what's truly behind that? What's truly going on? Let me truly assess the situation. What is the true threat here? Okay. So I would say, I think the suicidal thoughts are always going to stay. I think it's a little bit different because I know exactly how I can kind of think against the mindset.
Yeah, so it sounds like DBT obviously does several things. One is it has a certain language, which is helpful, I imagine.
Yes.
And then also you're practicing, I suppose, the muscle. I don't know if that's the right word, like creating that little space that you didn't have before where, like you said, paper cut to like suicide. There's something in between there now.
I don't think it's there yet, but I'm building the blocks toward it where I can stop myself and examine, what is that true threat level? Is it paper cut's not suicidal level?
Still could be a little painful though.
Absolutely.
Paper cuts do kind of suck. So today, so this is sort of good transition, pink and purple pill question. I will share with the audience, should they be first-time listeners. If I give Annie this pill, and I'm going to give it to her in this magical parallel universe, pink and purple pill, she takes it, she goes to sleep, she doesn't wake up. There's no pain. Nobody knows it's a suicide. What would you do with it today, right now?
I think I would pick the typical answer. I would take the pill. But hold on, take it physically. I think just keep it.
You know the risks involved with that, right?
I do. I think in a sense, I almost have that pink pill because I done the suicide attempt before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I do. I also know, right. But I mean, if you had it back in June, we wouldn't be talking for a different reason because you would have been dead.
Mm-hmm.
But I get what you're saying. I think it's like you've had experience with suicides. You kind of already have the pill because at the end of the day, and I may be a misunderstanding. If you want to go, you're going to go. You're just making you're making a choice to stay.
I think kind of just embracing that choice is out there rather than suppressing it. I think so many times, especially when you go to the doctor and they're like asking me the typical checklist of like, are you suicidal or how suicidal? There's always this pressure to be, no, I'm not suicidal. I don't want to go to the hospital. I don't want to get locked up. Like, right. I just want to get help. You need to just embrace that choice is there. And I feel like that will just make everything a little bit easier.
Isn't it fascinating? What you just said is, I don't want to go to the hospital and get locked up. I just want to get help. That's the reality we're in. Not, I want to go to a hospital and I want to because they help. I don't want to go to a hospital because I need help. Therefore, don't go.
Yeah.
Doesn't that tell you where we're at?
It's insane. It's just because the medical system was not designed. You go to a hospital and all of a sudden you're dealing with thousands and thousands of dollars of medical bills.
Right, right.
You have overworked staff. You're interacting with a whole bunch of people with a whole variety of mental problems that you yourself can't relate to. You're ripped out of your familiar environment, and it's just and you're treated with so much contempt and distrust, honestly.
Yeah.
By the staff, a lot of the times.
A lot of the time, sure. Always exceptions. Welcomed exceptions in here, but yeah. How many people know that we're having this conversation right now?
Just you. Probably just mention to my therapist later on, but yeah.
I wonder what they'll say about it. How many people other than your therapist, or perhaps including your therapist, do you have to talk to if you're thinking about suicide and you feel and that conversation would not make you feel worse during or after?
My sister's been a really good support. She was the only one that I think she kind of felt the same thing as me, where she went through this very traumatic experience, finding me in the car. And I think she felt the same thing, where nobody wanted to talk about it with her.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, obviously she's in therapy now, and she has the support system, but I felt like for a little bit, all we had was each other, to kind of talk about it. I think that really helped. And it's something where I know going forward, if I ever had those thoughts again, I could talk to her about it, because she was one of the only ones that was really real.
Right.
After.
So you've talked to her about it more than once, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that much where it's like a person in her situation, in her particular situation where she found you, do they have people to talk to about it?
It was actually very shocking. It was one of the things, and she struggled to find a therapist that was, or a situation. She tried doing group therapy herself, and not a lot of people can relate to that situation. And I almost think it's in that sense, a lot harder for people in that situation. There weren't a lot of support for her. I think she got told to be calling the suicide hotline. She's like, well, I'm not the one that was suicidal.
One of the reasons you reached out, and we'll talk about BPD, you were open to talking about your suicidality, suicide attempt, which I really appreciate. Are there any other things specifically around myths or misconceptions that have not come up that you want to dispel?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing with borderline personality disorder is, there's a lot of myths out there that, these people are stalkers or they're not functional in day-to-day life. I'm a very functional person. I hold down a job. I have a house. I would say 98% of the time I'm a very normal person. It's just when I have that roller coaster of I'm either hitting the highs or I'm hitting the lows, and there's not really much in between. And there's a lot of things out there where I thought, at first, this is the way I am, and this is my personality. I'm stuck this way, but things are malleable. If you have the mindset and determination of saying, hey, this is the situation, and I can take steps towards changing that situation, things won't, be magically falling into place, and you'll still have hard times. But I wanted to provide some hope out there for other people who are feeling this way, that for the longest time, I thought the emotional dysregulation was something that I would have. But now I feel a lot better knowing that there are tools that can be used to manage my symptoms.
Yeah.
Maybe just kind of dispel some of the stigma as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. Do you think when this podcast episode comes out, and it'll probably take a few months, that you will listen to it? Because I know it can be hard for some people to hear their own voice.
I'm not sure. Just because I do have trouble hearing my own voice, but I want to.
Yeah, and I think and you could potentially share it with people. Not because I need more listeners, but it's like this way of communicating in ways that you otherwise may not be able to, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I think I've come so far in 6 months. It's be interesting to kind of look back in another 6 months to see how much farther I could be from today.
Right. I was about to ask you something like, if we talked in 6 months or even a year, what if anything is different?
What do I hope to be different?
That's a better way to say it. Yeah, sure. What do you hope to be different?
I think one of the things that I I've always struggled with is just finding my own sense of identity. I've always wrapped that identity around my favorite person. If my favorite person loved cars, I would also be interested in cars. Or if that person loved football, I was also very much into football. So I've been doing a lot more things like exploring my hobbies, like reading, looking at history and doing writing. I want to get more into that. So I hope 6 months from now, I have a better sense of my identity. I've also, with my favorite person, also kind of always relied on them for a social life and a friend group. And it's something where at 30, I don't know how easy it is, but I would love to make some better steps toward developing my own individual social life.
Good goals, man.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share that we didn't get to?
I don't think so.
Nailed it. Biggest thing, though, is I've been waiting to say this for a few minutes now. I hope in the next coming days and weeks and months, you enjoy the process of becoming your own favorite person.
Thanks, Sean.
The memoir title is set. The conversation is done. Sunday is going to be at least a decent day. I'm in Mexico. You're in Pennsylvania. But seriously, Annie, I really appreciate you talking with me. And thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the time, Sean.
You got it. Hope your day is decent.
All right. Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support. Special thanks to Annie in Pennsylvania. Thanks, Annie. If you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, please reach out. I'd love to talk with you. hello@suicidenoted.com. You can learn more about this podcast on our website, which is admittedly often changing, being updated. You can also learn more on Spotify, where we have a weekly poll, or on Apple, if you listen there. And we'd love a rating, 5 stars only, of course, if you think we've earned that, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're out there. Check us out, reach out, get involved if you want. Whatever you're up to, I really do appreciate your support and your listening. Thanks very much. And that is all for this week's episode. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I'll talk to you soon.